So, today we're going to dive into a pretty intense topic: the intersection of social media and state surveillance for Iranians, both inside and outside the country. And what we're doing is breaking down the key findings from a really detailed UK Home Office report that looks at this very issue. I mean, think about this for a second. For most of us, that question is, well, it's just a hypothetical, right? But what if it wasn't? What if a single post, a comment, or even just a like could completely change your life? That's the reality we're going to explore. All right, so first up, let's look at what it's actually like on the ground. We're talking about the risks of using social media inside Iran, a place where what you say online can have some very real and often very severe consequences. And this right here really just lays out the stark difference. On one side, you have what for millions of us is a totally normal, everyday thing, posting something online. But on the other side, for an Iranian whose post is seen as critical of the regime, that same act can be viewed as a state crime. And we're not talking about small consequences here. The report details a whole range of things that can happen if your online activity is flagged. It can start with harassment and intimidation, but it can escalate, and fast, to arrest, ill treatment in jail, and even torture, all followed by serious criminal charges. It's an incredibly high-stakes environment to express yourself in. So, you might be asking, how on earth is this level of control even possible? How can they keep such a tight grip? Well, that brings us to the vast and complex system of state surveillance. This isn't just one group working in the shadows. It's a whole apparatus designed for digital monitoring. The report actually points to a whole network of organizations responsible for this. You've got the Besieged Cyber Council, the Cyber Police, which are known as FATA, and even specialized cyber units within the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. They all work together tracking what they see as online threats to national security. And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, one of those groups, just one, the Cyber Police, or FATA, well, they reportedly have around 42,000 volunteers. I mean, just let that number sink in. That is a massive force of people dedicated to watching what happens online. And their control comes from a multi-pronged strategy. During times of protest, they might just shut the internet down completely. Day to day, they filter popular apps like Facebook and WhatsApp so you can't even get to them. Then, the very tools people use to get around that filtering, things like VPNs, they've made the unlicensed use of them illegal. And on top of all that, they're constantly trying to push people onto their own state-run internet, where, of course, monitoring is a piece of cake. It's a whole system of digital containment. But it's not all about these big, sweeping controls. They also go after people one-on-one. And a key method they use is something called social engineering. This is basically psychological manipulation. It's all about tricking someone into giving up sensitive info, like their passwords, by playing on their trust. And here's how a typical attack might play out, according to the report. First, a state-sponsored agent will impersonate someone, maybe a journalist or an event organizer. Then they start building trust, chatting with their target, building a rapport. Once that trust is there, they send a malicious link, maybe disguised as an article or a registration form. And with just one click, that's it. They can steal login details and get total access to private accounts, emails, you name it. Okay, so here's where things get even more complicated. You might think, well, if I leave the country, I'm safe, right? Not so fast. The report makes it clear that this surveillance and these threats aren't just confined to Iran's physical borders. The state's reach is truly global. And to really get this, we've got to understand a key term from the report: surplace activity. It's a technical term, but it basically just means any political stuff you do against your home country after you've already left. So joining a protest in London or posting something critical from Berlin, that's surplace activity. And yeah, the takeaway from the source material is absolutely crystal clear here. The Iranian authorities are actively monitoring and targeting critics and dissidents who are living abroad. The surveillance literally follows them wherever they go. And we're not just talking about online snooping. This can get very real very fast. The report cites some pretty chilling data. Between early 2022 and early 2023, authorities in the UK stopped 15 plots to either kidnap or kill people here who were seen as enemies of the regime. And Worldwire, another data set, tracked 44 similar plots and attacks between 2023 and 2025. And if they can't get to the person directly, they have another really insidious tactic. It's called proxy punishment. Basically, if they can't reach an activist living abroad, they'll target their family back home in Iran. A visit to your parents' house from security forces is an incredibly powerful and efficient way to silence criticism from thousands of miles away. Okay, So, after hearing all that, the big question is what happens if you've been critical of the regime while you're abroad and then you decide to go back to Iran? What's your actual risk, legally speaking? Well, the report gets really specific on this, and it all comes down to UK legal cases, specifically two of them, known as BA and XX. And these cases have created a kind of framework for figuring out the level of risk a person might face if they go back. One case deals with physical activism, the other with digital. So, for people who actually went to protests abroad, physical protests, the BS case lays out a checklist of sorts. They ask, were you a leader or just someone in the crowd? How often did you go? Did you get any media coverage? Do you already have a history of activism? It's all about assessing how high profile you were. But what about online activity? Well, that's where the XX case comes in, and it looks at a totally different set of factors. Things like how influential are you online, what the court calls your social graph, basically your network and your reach. Does your personal profile, say being of Kurdish ethnicity, make you a bigger target? And really importantly, is it likely you were already being watched before you even hit what's called a pinch point? And I just mentioned this term pinch point. What is that? It's a really important idea. Think of it as any moment you have to make direct contact with the Iranian authorities. For example, maybe you're at an embassy applying for a travel document to go back home. That is the moment they are most likely to run your name through a few search engines. It's a point of maximum vulnerability. So when you put all these pieces together, a pretty stark picture emerges, right? We're talking about digital borders that create very, very real dangers for people, whether they're at home or thousands of miles away. And just to be super clear, all of this information, everything we've walked through, it comes directly from this extensive public report published by the UK's Home Office. It provides the factual basis for understanding these really complex issues. And I think the biggest takeaway here is this. In our modern world, for some people, national borders offer absolutely zero protection from their own government's surveillance. It's not something you can just leave behind by crossing a line on a map. Which leaves all of us with a really tough question, one that goes way beyond this specific report. When your digital life is truly borderless, where exactly can you find safety?